This is Roster Castellano interviewing Todd Fisher at the November 2019 Los Angeles Hollywood Show. So now, out of all the projects that you've worked on, which one is your favorite?
I think my favorite project was just hanging out with my sister and mother and following them around my whole life. I mean, in a way, I was the family designated driver.
Cool.
So I had to be the one that was always running around trying to keep everybody from falling off the rails. And so I guess my sister and mother were my favorite project. But of course, I worked on a lot of other projects going all the way back to National Geographic documentaries. And more recently, the Bright Lights documentary, I think, has become one of my favorite things that we all did together. That was the HBO special. And that's pretty powerful stuff, because when we were making that film, we did not know that was going to be the last thing. We didn't know it was going to be an homage to Carrie and Debbie. And so I guess you could say now that's become the best physical project.
Very nice. Okay, and so did you have any favorite films or television shows before you started doing many projects?
Of course, just like everybody else, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and my consciousness goes to, all the early shows from Andy Griffith to, the Leave It to Beaver TV shows. And I was, a Batman fan when that happened, and my mom would take us to meet Adam West.
Oh, cool.
And, so as a child, I grew up seeing all those shows. I grew up on the back lots of MGM, so I also knew all the classic stars, Bette Davis, Clark Gable, Jimmy Stewart. These were friends of ours, and so I had the unique opportunity to be very personal with those people, and they were magical people and very important to me as well as to all their other fans. So I grew up around some amazing people. My favorite movies, I have a big taste. I love Lawrence of Arabia, but I also love the classics like All About Eve or my mother's How the West Was Won is awesome. My mother made an awesome movie called The Cater Affair, written by Gore Vidal with Bette Davis. It's a black and white movie, and a lot of people don't even know Debbie was doing drama back in the 50s, and that's an awesome film. So, I mean, I've never been able to break it down to like, this one thing is my favorite thing. Gone with the Wind, not a bad little movie, but the epic Singing in the Rain, I mean, it's the best musical in my view ever made. Not to say that The Greatest Showman's not a great musical, it's different, but Singing in the Rain, really set the bar pretty high, and that's my favorite musical by far. Molly Brown's a great musical, my mom's favorite role, but Molly Brown is a little different than Singing in the Rain. What I love about Singing in the Rain, it's a movie about making a movie.
Yeah.
About making a musical. So we get away with why we're singing all the time. It's weird sometimes in movies when two people are talking and the next thing you know, they just bust out into song in your face, for no reason. And it's like, wow, what are you singing about? So the movie Molly Brown, though, was very clever with the way that they wove the justification for music into the storyline. But it's still not like a Singing in the Rain, where it's a movie, it's about making a musical. So I love that kind of stuff. And I grew up around the great films. My mother brought Carrie and I up very specifically on films that she loved. So she had very specific taste. So one day a week we used to watch a movie that she chose. It was her version of Turner Classic Movies, curated by her instead of Robert Osborne.
Nice.
And then we got to pick something the next day. So that would be like, we would choose something that just came out, where she would make us watch some more esoteric film, but nothing way out there. Like, she loved Frank Capra, she loved the classics, the Casablanca, the Maltese Falcons, the cinema noir. I mean, she was into stuff that would blow people's mind. I mean, she was a true movie fan and knew movies as well as anybody. She could tell you every best picture since the beginning of the Academy.
Very nice. Why would you say those were your favorites?
Why would I say those are my favorites? Just because, to me, they're part of my childhood. They're part of the fabric of this country. Those movies represent different times, different things that happened in our country. They've set fashion and style for the world, these movies and musicals. The world was influenced by these films. I was influenced by these films. You were influenced by these films. We all have our favorite films, but they've all affected our lives. They've affected how we talk, how we walk, what we say, what we wear. That's what movies do. It's the magic of film.
Very nice. And what was the first project that you worked on?
As in a feature film?
Yeah.
So let's think about that. So I worked with my mother on her film. It was called The Sound of Children. Carrie and I were acting in that movie.
Cool.
It was a television movie, and I played a Cub Scout, which wasn't a big reach for me because I actually was a Cub Scout at the time. So I didn't have to really reach for the King Lear, performance. Carrie played a schoolgirl in the film and a couple other short things, and we both, had a lot of fun. But I have to say, Carrie had more fun than I did. She gravitated towards that kind of performing and acting. I saw what was going on outside the windows, and I was looking at the crew and the cameras and the special effects guys, and animal wranglers, and I was like, man, there's where the fun is. There's no fun sitting here memorizing lines. The fun is in the art form of making the films. That's what influenced me to stay behind the scenes.
Cool. What was it like to work on those?
Well, when you work on a film and you're working with some of the greatest artists ever, I was trained by a director of photography named Harry Stradling Sr., and he made My Fair Lady, Hello Dolly.
Oh, yeah, I know him.
He's a great DP. So he trained me to be a DP. So when a guy like that's willing to take time, and why would he? Because he wanted to hand down a bit of himself to somebody that was willing to absorb it. So he handed things down to me, and I absorbed them, and I've handed them down to other people, and they've absorbed it, and the traditions go on. So when you're working on a film like that with these great artists, hopefully a little of their magic, a little of their knowledge, a little of their craftiness and way of creating art rubs off on you. Carrie said it best. She said, turn your pain into art. What was she talking about? Well, she was talking about writing more than anything else. So those were her words to writers. If you're going through something that seems completely unbearable and impossible to deal with, what did she do? Write a book. Write a screenplay. She turned something that was difficult into an art form, and then we all laughed through it, or we cried through it, and then we laughed through it, because she makes it so. And that's what's beautiful about filmmaking, whatever your area of interests are, whether you're a camera person or a writer, actor.
Very nice. Well, thank you for allowing me to interview.
You're welcome, buddy.
My pleasure.
All right, pal.
Well, there you have it. That was Ross Castanado interviewing Todd Fisher at the November 2019 Los Angeles Hollywood Show.